We are going to just wait another minute or so before we get started. Before we do, I can kick off with a really quick icebreaker. I know daylight savings time just started last week. Is there anything that's my official or unofficial start to the spring? Is there anything that anyone else does to kick off for the springtime or daylight savings time? For me, it's I always go out hike and I always do a lot of cleaning around this time of year. So my spring cleaning time.
None of the above. Hike. Hike's a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, I agree. I definitely go hiking.
Yep. Walks after work. We got seed germination. Lots of digging in the soil. That's good. Right jacket. That is a struggle, especially when you're going out hiking. If there's some elevation, you start off too warm and then end up.
What neighborhood are you in? I'm not digging any soil in my neighborhood.
No,
there isn't any to be found. Except in a pot.
Those raised beds.
Yeah, I'll do some raised beds this year, I think. Looking for a community garden over on the east side. Anybody got any ideas?
Yeah, actually, quite a few. We can get some resources in the chat.
Greektown.
Sarah's got a few community garden recommendations for you, and her email's in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got to grow some tomatoes.
All right. If it is just about 4:05 or actually 4:06, so I think we should go ahead and get started. See, folks are still popping in here and there, but I want to welcome everybody to this month's meeting. And I guess I will go ahead and kick it over to Ava for some Office of Sustainability updates before we get started.
Great. Well, thank you, Jared, and good evening again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the March 2026 Commission on Sustainability meeting. Tonight, we'll go over some general office updates, and we'll continue our theme of protecting the environment. We'll be focusing particularly on watershed planning and hear from members in our team, in the Office of Sustainability, as well as the Friends of Jones Falls and Gwynns Falls. But we have a really big announcement to make. The Department of Planning has a new planning director, and we wanted to give everyone a chance to be introduced to her. Some of you may already know her. Ren Southard was appointed as the planning director, the acting planning director. And so I'll give her a chance to come off mute and introduce herself and say a little bit about some of the transitions that we're going through as a planning department.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Ava. Can everybody hear me? Are we good? My sound's working?
Yes.
Thanks for the warm welcome and the introduction. I wanted to actually first start by saying that, so I'm an architect by trade, but I've always been really interested in planning. And I first got introduced to this department as a sustainability ambassador. I think it was 2015, and really got involved as a volunteer through Neighborhood Design Center. Some of you may know Neighborhood Design Center, but the first time I ever met Amy Gilder-Basati was at an open house for the Green Network Plan. So I'm a big fan of this commission. Before this was a sub-cabinet, I was always really supportive of the office and worked closely with past directors and Ava when she started on the 2019 sustainability plan update. So thank you for the work that you do for the city. I know it's not easy, and I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to supporting it. So with that said, I am a new appointee along with the Department of Housing and Community Development. They have a new housing commissioner over there. Tim was here at planning for a few months. He is now the acting director over at DHCD, which I think presents a lot of opportunities to move sustainability work forward. we are a city with vacancy. Tim and I both see that as an opportunity to advance sustainability outcomes, whether that's preserving land for green infrastructure in the future or meeting MS4 requirements, working towards new housing and new development and having stricter, more energy efficient, greener building codes, things like that. So I'm really looking at the work that we're doing here in the planning department as being complementary to the work that Tim is doing over at DHCD. And I look forward to working with Ava and this commission. And Ava, did you want me to say anything else or did I kind of cover it?
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you so much, Ren. I think I speak for many people when I say we're really looking forward to your leadership, and I'm very excited very excited for all the great work to come. So,
thanks so much.
Right. So, we'll transition into some upcoming events. And if folks have any questions for Ren, let us know. We're happy to connect you to her as our new director. But we will ask everyone to please save the date of June 6th for the annual Sustainability Open House. It'll take place at the Middle Branch Fitness and Wellness Center from 12 to 4 p.m. That is a Saturday, and our theme this year is People, Planet, and Prosperity. Natalie, did you want to say anything else about the event?
Well, we're really excited. This is going to be the biggest and best event yet. We're going to be developing a program to go along with the day. So we'll be having demonstrations and different opportunities to really provide more interactive and experiential fun at the open house. So we're really excited. Myself, Eden, and Ted are meeting weekly as of now to plan the open house, but we are going to be opening up perhaps a monthly planning meeting for commission members and other folks that would like to participate. And so we'll be sending out information shortly about that. But really excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie. We're really looking forward to the event this year. And I want to emphasize again how critical and significant of an engagement opportunity our annual open house will be for all of our commissioners. We really look forward to your inputs as the planning continues. So on the next slide, we are happy to share that our newsletter has been revived. We are experiencing some technical difficulties as it relates to our website right now. So if anyone's having issues with that, we are working on getting the website back up. But our newsletters will continue to go out. And we appreciate everyone's patience as we work through some technical difficulties. But in this month's newsletter, we highlight some really exciting programs. Including some events by Grow Home, which is a nonprofit in South Baltimore that supports workforce development. Also, some of the work that our interns have been supporting, or some of the work that they've been doing in terms of advocacy, spending time in Annapolis, and then also some different grant and job opportunities. And I believe we also feature, it's not here, but we feature some updates on the upcoming Grow Center series that DPW hosts. All right, so I'll pass it back to Jared to do the commission roll call. Thank you, everyone. And Jared, it looks like you're muted.
Thanks, Ava. All right, I am Jared Lyles. I'm present. Morgan Grove. So I'm in here. See him on mute.
I'm also
I see him in
present.
the chat.
I'm working through getting used to different interfaces of WebEx, Zoom, and Teams. Here.
Regina Boyce is in session. Phil Costa.
Actually, she just joined. I just saw her name pop up.
Oh, perfect.
Phil Costa's here.
Perfect, Phil. Nicolette Boussaint. Councilwoman Porter. Right. We'll welcome one of the newly sworn in members of the commission, Jennifer Aosa.
Hi, it's Jen, and I am happy to be here.
Sorry about that, Jen,
No worries.
going forward. Derek Baumgartner. Vito Castellgrande.
I'm here. I'm here.
Ned Diolia. Diolia.
I'm here. It's Dioya, but it's totally fine.
Timothy Ford.
Yep, here I am.
Right. Carly Hinton.
I'm here.
Jeffrey Holland.
I'm here.
All right. And Alicia Johnson.
I'm here.
Terrace King.
I'm here.
Barnett Navarro.
Yes, here.
Erica Reeves. Aaron Reed Miller.
And
Perfect. And Ben Roush.
Here. Jared, you didn't have to wear a tie just for us. It's pretty good looking.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Ben. All right. And just a really quick update, too. I know many of you, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there, but I'll be there at the next one at the swearing in ceremony that happens. So I just want to personally welcome all of the new commissioners. And there's also the next swearing in ceremony, which I will be at on Monday, April 20th at 12:30. And I know that Amy actually just sent an email out about that not too long ago. Did you want to add anything about the next swearing in ceremony on the 20th?
Sure. And Ted, can you advance the slides? There's one slide showing the folks who were sworn in on March 2nd. So it's nice to have such a big group participate. And then we have, I think, 7 more folks to have sworn in the next ceremony. If you go to the next slide, we've been informed that the next ceremony will be on Monday, April 20th at 12:30 p.m. And several folks have already confirmed that they are available to participate in that. So anyone who I reached out to who wasn't part of the March ceremony, let me know if you are able to confirm your availability for the April 20th ceremony. And the location hasn't been announced yet, but once we find that out, I will share that information out. I would assume that it would either be at City Hall or the War Memorial. I'm not aware of other locations where they've done this. So I'm not quite sure what's behind the not having the location announced, but I'll share the information once we have it. Thanks.
All right. And I guess one more reminder too about financial disclosures for both new and existing commissioners. Those are due, correct me if I'm wrong, but as soon as possible, correct, Amy?
I need to find out the date. I think it's usually the end of April, but I didn't put a slide in for that because I forgot to reach out to the ethics board staff to clarify the date for that.
So that's the city, right? So if you filed a state, that doesn't apply here, correct?
Right. So the city has requirements for certain staff people. So like our Office of Sustainability staff and some folks who are on the commission who work for the city likely might already have this as part of their job, but then also members of boards and commissions. There's a financial disclosure that's an annual form that you would submit online. And I believe the deadline is usually the end of April, and I'll follow up to the commission members with an email with the link and the details for that.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And the financial disclosure, it's mainly about disclosing any kind of business with the city or kind of other potential conflicts that would need to be disclosed.
Sure. I filed one for the state already.
And I think we're ready then to move over to our topic for the month with watershed planning. Did you want to make the introductions, or you want me to make the introductions, Jared?
Yeah, go for it, Amy.
Sure. So we have three sets of speakers, and first we will kick off with Mark Cameron and Andrew Epps with the Watershed Planning and Partnerships team within the Office of Compliance and Research for the Department of Public Works, talking citywide about watershed planning and partnerships. And I need to give Andrew the ability to share his slides.
Yes, thank you. Well, first, thank you to the Commission for your time this evening. Thank you to Amy, to Ava, and the Office of Sustainability for the invitation to speak with you all on watershed planning. So my name is Andrew Epps. Are my slides? They are sharing. Are they sharing? Can you see them?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay. So my name is Andrew Epps. I'm a city planner with the Department of Public Works. I work in the Watershed Planning and Partnership section. I'm also joined by Mark Cameron, who is the section chief, and so he will speak a little bit later in the presentation. But we're here today just to give you kind of a high-level overview of watershed planning and what we're doing in the Department of Public Works. So as you all know, Baltimore is really a city built on the water. So the city, encompasses 5 watersheds. We have over 116 miles of non-tidal streams within the city, as well as nearly 60 miles of tidal coastland. We're also a highly urbanized area. And so almost half of the city is impervious surface. And we also have a pretty poor soil, which means that we have issues around infiltration when it comes to stormwater and runoff. So when we don't do anything around stormwater runoff and watershed planning, that has consequences for our streams, our natural waterways, as well as our infrastructure. So this is what we're trying to avoid. When we think about watershed planning, I like to think about kind of it from 2 different perspectives. We're trying to address both water quality as well as water volume. So when we think about water quality, this is, some of the objectives here are pollutant removal. The primary pollutants that we think about are nitrogen, phosphorus, as well as suspended sediment. We're also working on different restoration projects, so wanting to think about how we can benefit communities through this by treating water quality, as well as ecological uplift. Water volume is more kind of on we might think of this as kind of flooding. How do we address that? One of those is through maximizing the capacity of our stormwater conveyance system, as well as through various drainage improvement. There are a couple of ways that we do that through watershed assessment and implementation plans. This is kind of the strategic planning arm of our watershed planning efforts, through restoration projects, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, as well as through different flood mitigation projects. Across the city, there are lots of folks who are working on different issues related to watershed planning. But in the Department of Public Works, some of the main players are, my office working with Mark in watershed planning and partnerships. Our Office of Engineering and Construction, they are kind of the project managers of a lot of our restoration projects, and do kind of some of the heavy lifting of making sure that these projects get in the ground. And as well as our marketing and communications team. So, it's important that we're doing these projects. It's also important that we are engaging communities and making sure that residents are aware of these projects, what they're doing, and how we're trying to address various aspects of watershed planning. For those of you who don't know, in Baltimore, we have 3 different utilities. So our water supply, our wastewater, as well as our stormwater. So a lot of cities, especially on the East Coast, have a combined storm and sewer system. So meaning that all of their wastewater and stormwater is going into a treatment facility. But in Baltimore, we have two different systems for our stormwater and our wastewater. And so, you flush the toilet, you take a shower, that's all going into a treatment facility. But our stormwater is going into, we have nearly almost over 1,000 miles of pipes, inlets, and 17 1,700 outfalls. And so when it rains, all of that water then is flowing through outfalls into our streams, waterways, and ultimately into the harbor. So because we have this system, one of the things that we're subject to is an MS4 permit, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. This is a citywide permit, so this affects every agency across the city, but it is administered by DPW. So we are the ones who are working closely with MDE on different reporting requirements for the permit. There are three kind of main components of this. So management programs, this is making sure that we're not contributing any more pollution to our runoff, restoration, as well as assessments, making sure that the projects that we're doing are effective. And I'm going to focus here on our watershed restoration projects. So you can think about these, you can think about our stormwater conveyance system as kind of a gray infrastructure, right? It's mostly composed of pipes and inlets. And so then green infrastructure is using natural and nature-based processes to remove some of those pollutants from stormwater and also to increase infiltration. So the projects that we do around green infrastructure are all located in the city, on city-owned land, and that can sometimes be a challenge, right? We have a limited supply of city-owned land, and when we are able to put these projects and to install these projects, there's a lot of benefits. So obviously, we're addressing environmental health, but these can also contribute to neighborhood beautification. When we're putting them in streets and in the right-of-way, they can also help with traffic calming and pedestrian safety. And then lastly is just opportunities for public education. I think it's always important, especially around issues of stormwater and any kind of infrastructure projects, to make sure that the folks who are living close to these projects know what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve. There's a couple of different projects that we address. One of them is environmental site design. This is kind of a broad category of projects. This can include anything from bioretention facilities, rain gardens, bioswales. So these are two projects that are located in Baltimore City. We also do urban soil restoration. This is removing the first layer of compacted soil and then aerating that, turning that up to ultimately increase infiltration. So we have a couple of projects that are going to come online hopefully this fall. And lastly is impervious surface removal. A couple of years back, there was a big push to do this across different cities in Baltimore. And so this is just removing pavement and planting that with grass and trees. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mark Cameron, who will talk a little bit about how we prioritize these projects across the city.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for having us present to you today. Quick clarification, we are part of the Office of Research and Environmental Protection, so the old name of Compliance and Research is out. We're now Research and Environmental Protection. So Andrew outlined very well the background of why we're doing watershed planning. So how do we go about planning? How do we go about identifying where we should be focusing our attention? In 2019, we did a citywide assessment that looked at three main factors: equity, health, and physical feasibility. We looked at these factors to help guide us as to where would it be most beneficial for us to prioritize looking at green infrastructure. And so the map on the right, you'll see that the priority neighborhoods are in red, orange are second priority, and then so on. So this guides us as to where we're going to focus. Next. I'm going to do like the old slide projector and have someone guide this for me. So we've identified broad areas, neighborhoods where we wanted to focus our attention. When we get to the neighborhood scale, we are doing desktop analysis and site visits to identify locations where different restoration projects could be located. And so these are some of the factors that we're considering.
Did we lose Mark?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I can, I guess until he comes back, I'm happy to kind of continue on here. Yes, so those are some of the factors. We also, this is the interactive map that we've created that shows where we have focused some of these projects across the city. And I think this is important to show both kind of where these projects exist, but also where we have looked and there haven't been feasible projects. So this is a kind of a public facing map that just helps residents know kind of how we're approaching different aspects of watershed planning and that, really is across the city.
Andrew, you want me to jump back in? Sorry.
You're back in. All right.
WebEx kicked me out. I'm with you, Morgan. Too many different platforms. But you could go on, Andrew. Sorry about that. As Andrew outlined before, there are different offices within Department of Public Works that are engaged in watershed planning efforts. The Office of Engineering and Construction are the lead for stream restoration and outfall stabilization. So they have done studies to identify where degraded streams are located, where degraded outfalls are located, and they're the lead for moving those restoration projects forward. Next. So it's important that we do outreach because these projects, in particular, the smaller restoration projects, are located in neighborhoods. They're located in communities. They're located in parks. They're located on schools. So it's very important that we are out there at the planning stage, meeting with communities, meeting with agencies, meeting with stakeholders to present these projects, to talk about them, and to get their feedback and vet these. In FY 2025, we attended over 40 community meetings across Baltimore, presenting where we had identified possible restoration projects. We also meet and vet these with different city agencies. Department of Public Works is not responsible for very much property in Baltimore City. So a lot of the projects that we're looking at are in the right of way. They may be in parks. As Andrew mentioned, we worked with schools on impervious surface removal. So we meet with those agencies to make sure that these locations are not conflicting with any plans or projects that they're doing. And if they are, then we take that off of our list. We also share this information with all of the council members when we're looking at projects in their district. We work with our Office of Legislative Affairs to coordinate that. And we do listen to agencies, and we listen to community and stakeholder. As Andrew showed with the interactive map, there are a lot of projects that we identify that through evaluation are just not feasible because of one of those factors that we shared. There could be a utility conflict. There could be just not enough of a drainage area. There might be too much drainage area for the available space to treat. Community may not like locations, so we will take those off, and then again with agencies as well. So we do listen, and if you look at that interactive map, you'll see that we probably move forward with about 1 out of 5 of our projects because of that. Next. In addition to water quality, we outlined that part of our watershed planning is around flooding. This, again, is led through our Office of Engineering Construction. You can see here 3 major projects that they're currently working on that are priority flood areas within Baltimore City. We're also engaging in a citywide H&H model that will help us to further address flooding. And we coordinate and collaborate with other agencies around flooding, both in the planning, but also in the, responding to flooding. And in particular, we've been coordinating with the Office of Sustainability in their watershed master plan that you'll hear about later. Next. And then finally, our name is both watershed planning and partnerships. And we recognize that we're limited in terms of how much public land there is. And in order to affect change, we need to be working with and supporting our private landowners and our nonprofits and others who are engaged in this work. So we provide $200,000 a year to the Chesapeake Bay Trust that is used to fund restoration and education projects in Baltimore City. We also work with researchers in the area, in particular with the Baltimore Social Environmental Collaborative. They're doing a lot of work around flooding, and we've been working with them on flood modeling and other research that they're engaged with. And then finally, as was mentioned with the sustainability newsletter, DPW runs the Grow Center program. Grow Center program, if you're not familiar with it, hosts a number of community pop-ups and workshops where we're providing free material like mulch. We're working with Tree Baltimore to provide free trees. We have a number of agencies and nonprofits who provide free information and resources at our events. We are doing a number of compost workshops and some rain barrel workshops. And I will drop the link in the chat as to where our schedule is. And, we encourage everyone to come out and check that out. So that's it. That's a broad overview of what we do in terms of watershed planning. And I don't know if we're taking questions now, Amy, or if we're going to wait. But here's contact information for Andrew and myself. And, we're happy to have any follow-up after this if needed.
Yes, we can definitely take questions now. There are a couple in the chat, which I'll read out. Tim Ford, who's one of the commission members, asked, when you reference DPW, you're including your water and sewer and trash and recycling department, correct? When approaching a stream restoration project.
Can you repeat that? Because I heard number one, the Department of Public Works is broad. It is water, wastewater, drinking water, wastewater, sewer, trash, property management, etc. But what was the question about streams and that?
Tim, do you want to come off of mute and ask your question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you, when you approach a stream restoration project, that you're including those departments, water and sewer. We have a chronic problem in the city with sewer overflows in our streams. Yeah, obviously, if you're doing a stream restoration project, that has impacts. And then, of course, trash and recycling. And then any efforts they have upstream from the DPW perspective in terms of chronic litter and trash problems in the city that contribute to stormwater runoff.
I'll say that we are addressing all of the above, and in particular for stream restoration projects, there are stream restoration projects, and I think as Andrew showed in some of the photos, where there are utilities, in particular sewer, that are adjacent to or crossing streams. So we definitely, that is a collaborative effort within Department of Public Works. We are not siloed, but we work across agency bureaus and offices.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Were there other questions, Amy?
So Aaron had asked for the name of your office, and Andrew responded in the chat, and gave the office and the, I'm not sure if you're a division or kind of what your section within your agency is, but he provided that.
Yeah, Watershed Planning and Partnership is a section that is within the Office of Research and Environmental Protection, which is in the Bureau of Water and Wastewater, which is in the Department of Public Works. So there is our, that's our hierarchy.
And then the other question that I see in the chat is from Livia. She was asking if the interactive map, if the link to that can be shared.
Yes, once we get it back on the city's website. Many of you know that we've gone about an update of the city's website, and there are a number of pages and other sections that we're working on getting active again and updated. So
I included the kind of static link, but that there's an interactive map tab on DPW's website, and so it'll be there quickly. But in the chat is the location of the interactive map.
Yeah, so we're all going through. City agencies are going through our, updating.
Looks like Terrace has a question.
Yes, Mark, how you doing? Quick question. You said
Hey, Terrace.
Great to see you. You said 1/5 of the projects go to completion. What percentage would you say come from community pushback out of that 1/5?
I don't know. I'd have to look at that. It really varies depending on the neighborhood.
Okay.
And if I were to ask, I'm not going to ask because it will take too long, but if we were to ask, like, what do you think a main pushback is? Because a majority of our projects are in the right-of-way, parking is the biggest pushback. People don't want to lose their parking. So that's where we get opposition.
And I would also just add that, because a lot of these projects, DPW, we don't own the land, so we have to work with both, work closely with kind of the Department of Transportation as well as Recreation and Parks. And so I would say that a majority of the time that projects will not move forward is actually that agency might have a plan for that location. So in particular with DOT, they're putting in a bike lane or putting in, complete streets. So that's usually kind of when those projects don't move forward. But if there are any locations kind of on that interactive map that you're curious about, I'm happy to follow up on.
And I'll say as well that we do the majority of kind of the investigation and evaluation, but we also get community members who are recommending locations. So whenever locations are suggested to us, we always evaluate those, and then we get back to the individual or the community to as to what our result is. I'll also note that in one of the slides that showed the process from planning through maintenance, because we recognize that projects don't end with construction, especially those that are nature-based. It could be 3 to 5 years from when we're evaluating a location to start of construction. So, things change, and sometimes that might impact our locations as well. So it's not a quick turnaround in terms of what we're doing.
I think that's really interesting. I remember a few years ago, Mark, we went into a meeting with New Shiloh right there off of Monroe, and there was a project there. And I think we had that faith that they said yes to the project, but I'm sure it's still in process, or there was another step there between the yes from the community and then the state maybe approving the funding for it and going through the process. So it'd be interesting for me to loop back with them, but is there another step after that process where like the state selects like, okay, we're going to fund this project in this community because of its impact?
The state is not involved in the funding.
Got it.
Funding for our stormwater projects is from the Stormwater Utility Fund. So those are determined by budgets, and we only have so much money. So that is part of what DPW does. Our fiscal office is to work with our engineering and construction as to which projects are moving forward based on how much money we have, based on what bids are coming in, and they're getting higher and higher. So the process typically is that we identify projects, we have meetings like the one that you mentioned, then we move projects forward to Office of Engineering and Construction. They then, based on their budget, will identify the projects within that list that that they're going to move forward with. So not all the projects that we evaluate that move into engineering and construction necessarily move forward right away. So, we're always looking at new locations, but, one of the challenges we have is because of the time that it takes is looping back with communities and with stakeholders to provide them with updates. And that's where we work with our marketing and communications office and community liaisons. They're an integral part in terms of outreach and communicating with communities. So we could circle back, Terrace. We'd have to look and see where that project might be right now.
For sure, but this map is phenomenal. I'm not sure when this was developed, but thanks a lot, Mark, for that clarifying piece.
You're welcome, and thank you, Andrew, for getting that map together.
Just want to be mindful of the time and then take the last couple questions, I guess, that we have not gotten to that are in the chat. Let's see. So, Lynn Pender asks, let's see. So what is the, I'm sorry. Okay. How are frontline communities in Baltimore being prioritized in the selection of projects and sites across Baltimore City? And what is the process of engaging existing neighborhoods, community associations, and other community-based organizations in those areas of planning and projects?
I'll iterate again sort of what we went over. We shared on one slide our prioritization map. So that, I think, answers the question of how those frontline communities have been identified. What is our engagement? We contact community leaders, we contact stakeholders, we go out and we meet with communities, and we share with them what we're doing, what the goals are, possible project locations, and we have those conversations with them. The reality is you go, planning is interesting because residents, I would say, are not necessarily that good at open-ended questions. So, going into a community and saying, what would you like? Where do you want to see this, that, etc. They often need to have more information. So that's the type of desktop analysis that we're doing. We're doing that initial vetting, and then we're going out and we're meeting with communities. We share paper copies. We share digital copies with them. We attend their meetings, virtual, in person, whatever that might be. And then we try to continue a follow-up relationship with them to keep them up to date. That's where some of it starts to get handed over to our communications and marketing office, because the liaisons are out and about in the community on a more regular basis than we are.
Thanks, Mark. And I see Andrew got to the other question that Sarah asked in the chat there. Thanks for all the great information, both of you, Andrew and Mark. And
thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you all. And I'm going to stay on to hear the other two presentations. And then if there's any other questions, we'll be around.
Thank you both.
From there, I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker. We have the Friends of Jones Falls to present the Jones Falls Strategic Plan, Rebecca Winans-Skold. Hope I got that right.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that? The presentation?
Not yet.
No, still can't see it.
It's like it's coming.
It looks like it's trying to load.
All right.
Give it a few more
Thinking
seconds.
about it.
Here it is.
Okay, wow, that was slow. Okay. My name is Rebecca Weiner-Skunneft. I'm a senior project manager with Biohabitats. I've been working in the watershed planning, master planning, stormwater management arena for more than 25 years. And for those of you who are not familiar with Biohabitats, we're a consulting firm. We're headquartered in Baltimore, and we provide conservation planning, ecological restoration, and regenerative design services. And I believe I'm joined at this meeting by a number of members from Friends of the Jones Falls, including Sandy Sparks, who's the president, and Al Berry, who is the strategic planning chair. So, maybe hopefully stating the obvious, Biohabitats is a consultant hired by Friends of the Jones Falls to help, to work with them through the strategic planning effort. And hopefully my slides will move faster than when I click than it did when it shared. There we go. Okay. So just kind of a overview of the process and where we're at in the strategic planning process. So the goal is to ensure the Jones Falls and its tributaries are accessible and healthy assets for the whole population. And the intent is to create a strategic plan that becomes a vision for the future, a roadmap that it provides direction and focus, has clear actions and responsibilities with a timeline, and increases collaboration and support across the watershed. It is being funded through a NIFWF grant, a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, and it is entirely a community-driven process. For the purposes of the strategic plan, the watershed has been divided into 3 sections, lower, middle, and upper. And as you can see, lower is entirely contained within the city. The middle is, you've got a little bit of city in there, but then it's most primarily the county. And so that's kind of a transitional area between, that very dense older city development, and you start to get into more of that suburban development, transitioning up to the upper watershed, which is, you've got some large lot development, more conservation, more of a rural feel. To date, we have had 3 stakeholder meetings, our first round of stakeholder meetings. We had a meeting in each one of these sections. It was open to the public, and we introduced kind of some basic watershed concepts, strategic planning concepts, the ideas, kind of the topics and the headers that we're seeking through this strategic plan, and then broke into facilitated groups for discussion and had folks talk about what's working well, what's not working so well, and most importantly, what are the opportunities that exist within the Jones Falls watershed. So we just wrapped that up maybe 2 weeks ago. And so we are in the post-processing portion of kind of that timeline. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but we'll be going back out again and doing a second round of stakeholder meetings where we'll share out the results of those stakeholder meetings. We'll be working to form the input that we've collected into a series of recommendations, and then working to prioritize and make those things actionable. But in order to have a framework for the strategic plan, we are organizing everything around the following 5 topic areas. I'm going to talk about them all more here in a second, just to give everybody an idea of kind of how the strategic plan is organized. We also, I'm not going to go over this today due to the time constraints, but we have example metrics that we have pulled and been providing under each one of these headers. And that's to help give folks participating in the strategic planning process some context for, what this means, what this could look like. An example metric is, under habitat and biodiversity, we're looking at tree canopy. Under water quality, we're of course looking at what are the results of water quality sampling in the streams within the Jones Falls. So our first topic is water quality and stream health. And the intent here is to focus on actions to reduce pollution and restore ecological function in streams and tributaries. And so example action types might be green stormwater infrastructure, so capturing and treating that stormwater runoff, sewer overflow mitigation, that's obviously being done and underway by the city and the county through the consent decree, and then of course stream restoration, which has already been mentioned by the city. Under habitat and biodiversity, we're exploring strategies to protect, restore, and connect habitats across the watershed. An example action types here might be riparian corridor restoration, invasive species removal, wetland creation, wildlife connectivity, and habitat. And then I think this is the third topic area, access, recreation, and public space, is about identifying opportunities to improve equitable access to nature and create inviting spaces for recreation and education. And example action types under this topic include trail and greenway improvements, safe water access points, parks and green space in underserved areas. Land use, infrastructure, and flooding. So this is looking at where land use, zoning, and infrastructure can better support watershed health and community resilience. So example action types under this topic area include flood-prone site retrofits, land conservation priorities, and vacant land conversion. So this is a big topic area. There's a lot of things that fall under this header. And then the last one is history, culture, and community stewardship, and identifying how cultural heritage and community leadership can shape and sustain restoration efforts. And example action types might include honoring historical cultural sites and design, local storytelling and interpretive trails, long-term maintenance programs, and community partnerships. So the process for developing the strategic plan as I've mentioned, we've wrapped up our first round of stakeholder meetings at the very end of February. Last one was February 28th. There is a steering committee comprised of members from all across the watershed who are providing, input and guidance and steering of the project throughout the entire process. And so we'll be meeting with them again shortly. We'll have that second round of stakeholder meetings, hopefully in the fall. We'll be sharing out those recommendations and getting input. What did we miss? What comments do you have? Hopefully, get some sense of prioritization as well. We'll draft a strategic plan, finalize it, and then it'll be presented at the Beyond the Jones Falls Conference in fall of 2027. So our next steps, so we're working on getting out an online survey. And so we had those first round of stakeholder meetings, and we wanted to increase the diversity of input in the strategic planning process. And so we're working on getting that out. And I think a question for this group here is, or certainly input that we would love to have, is if you have any groups that you would recommend that we distribute the survey to. It's going to be all online. We're working to consolidate ideas and information gathering. And so if there's any existing or ongoing efforts that you think we should be aware of, again, we'd love to hear that. Send us your reports, send us your links. We'd love to take all of that into account. We certainly don't want to have any duplicative efforts. The more we can be kind of in synergy with other efforts, the better. And then we're going to formalize a series of draft recommendations. I already mentioned this, the second round of stakeholder meetings. Draft and finalize the plan, and then present at Beyond the Jones Falls Conference. So I think I'll pause there and see. I didn't get a chance to look and see. I know I saw Sandy. I don't know if Barry was on, or Al was on, Al Barry. If you all had anything to add to this brief overview of the strategic planning process. Okay. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions about the strategic planning process, where we're headed, where this is going, and our timeline, anything that you'd like to discuss.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Jeffrey. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I know we everybody got kind of dealt a bit of a blow when the council approved Seawall buying the transfer station. I was wondering how that's affected kind of what you're looking at the lower end of the Jones Falls, when what they've told you is going to happen in there, if anything.
I don't know if any of the Friends of the Jones Falls board members want to respond to that. Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, I think it would be good to hear from Friends of the Jones Falls if they're able to chime in. But I think we're certainly taking current events, into account, but we're still certainly in the process of processing all of the input that we've gathered from, that first round of stakeholder meetings. And so I can't say, whether or not a recommendation directly related to that will come out of that. I suspect there will, but I think that's to be determined.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Hi, I was curious whether or not, and Sandy may have some background on it too, whether as part of this effort, you'll be sort of putting together archival materials about what the Jones Falls used to look like. I think it was rather dramatic and beautiful, and it gives a sense of not to say what it could be again per se, but it gives an idea that this the kind of living resource it was, and that is a living resource now, and gives some, the past might give some ideas that fuel the imagination for the future.
Yeah, we will. So I don't know how comprehensive it would be, but we're certainly going to review, the history of the Jones Falls, which doesn't just include burying streams. It also, is reflective of, the pristine conditions prior to, the intense development and the burying of streams. I mean, I know, in the past, there was a hotel that would tout, the pristine drinking water quality of the Jones Falls, and that was like their selling point. And so I think that is an important history to revisit and remember. And I like that your use of, how you're thinking about it in terms of it as an inspiration. Yes, and please, I agree. Don't drink the water from the Jones Falls. But at one point they did.
Rebecca?
Yes.
This is Dick Williams, Friends of Jones Falls, VP. I'm sorry I was having a little trouble unmuting. I would just mention in response to your question about what we might have to say about Potts and Callahan sites being acquired by Seawall. Next Tuesday, beginning at 7 p.m. At our house in what they call the garage is the initial listening session where we will be presenting, as will Blue Water. So it's it's all are welcome to come. We've posted on the Friends of Jones Falls Facebook page. For instance, I think it's coming to Instagram if it's not already there. Information about this meeting, including the RSVP, which Seawall is asking, I think, just so they have an idea of how many are coming. But they have made it clear that they're very interested in having as much input by users of Jones Falls Trail and areas immediately around that Lower Jones Falls those sites. So all are welcome to come to that. And I'll see if I can find the RSVP link to put in the chat.
Thank you. That's really useful to add.
Thank you.
There is another question about funding, and thank you, Morgan, for chiming in that, yes, the strategic planning process itself is grant funded through a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. We don't know yet, what the recommendations are going to be and which ones are going to be prioritized. I think once we have a better handle on that, then I think the potential for pursuing grant funding or other types of funding for implementation is a possibility. But I think that's kind of like, one thing at a time. Friends of the Jones Falls is a volunteer organization. And so, they will be looking for funding sources to move implementation forward. Any other questions?
Rebecca, this is Meredith. I work at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. You were just asking for organizations to reach out possibly as stakeholders. I thought it would be interesting if you reached out to K through 12 schools or even universities that are in that watershed. I think the younger generation is sometimes underrepresented in stakeholder assessments, and it could be also an interesting educational opportunity as well. And possibly through the K through 12, you could get parents involved that might not have known about it or realized what the process involved too. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, we have had, I think, a fair amount of university participation. It's been actually really, it's been great, the amount of participation that we've had from the local universities in the stakeholder meetings, including even, some of their students. We've also been in close partnership with Park School, and one of their classes is studying this effort as part of their class, and a good number of the students from that class have participated in this process. And I realize that that's just one small segment of a a school participation, but I think it's a good start to that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that input too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rebecca. If there are no more questions, then we'll move on to the next speaker. Appreciate your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll move on to our last speaker before some internal commission business. Jones Falls and Direct Harbor Watershed Master Plans discussion with Joe Birch, the floodplain manager from the Baltimore Office of Sustainability. Ready, Joe?
Everybody, hey, how are you, Jerry?
Good.
There we go. Thanks, Teddy. So I'm going to keep this relatively brief. I'm also going to stay off camera. Hopefully you're okay with that. I have a pretty bad cold. So just imagine Home Alone, burglar sheep over here, and that's what's going on. So I'm going to just speak to the slides and try to go pretty quick. So as mentioned, we are currently working on a watershed master plan. That watershed master plan is going to cover the Baltimore Harbor and the Gwynns Falls watershed. Almost 2 years ago, we won a DNR grant for almost $110,000 to write these plans. They're expected to be a pilot for what we hope to roll out for the rest of the city of Baltimore for our other watersheds that are present. I believe there are 6 watersheds total. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, no, 5. Wait. Yes. So if you look on the screen there, the Gwynns Falls is in the light blue and the Baltimore Harbor is in the yellow. It's about 52%, I believe, of the area within the city boundary that Gwynns Falls and Baltimore Harbor cover. Ultimately, like I said, we want to do the Jones Falls, Back River, and Patapsco as well. So these plans will really synthesize information that we already have in some of the plans from the Office of Sustainability. So the disaster preparedness plan and the nuisance flood plan. We're also looking into tapping into some resources like the watershed implementation plans that are an MS4 requirement. And kind of the big push, the impetus for why we wanted to write these plans. As many of you know, the city participates in the community rating system. That is an optional program, a voluntary program that you can participate in, and Baltimore City does. We are currently a Class 5 city. You enter the program as a Class 10, and then you can eventually get all the way up to a Class 1, although there's less than a handful of those in the entire country. And so in order to get to that next big step of a Class 4, there are some prerequisites that are attached to that. And one of those is writing watershed master plans, and it has to cover at least 50% of the city's area. It actually kind of worked out. So the Baltimore Harbor and the Gwynns Falls are watersheds that have been very, very studied. We have lots of data on those watersheds, and the nuisance flood plan specifically addresses the inner harbor and the flooding associated there. So we already had a wealth of information related to those watersheds, and those were why those 2 were picked. On to the next, please, Ted. Okay. Here we go. So we have made a lot of progress since I've last talked to you guys about what was up with the watershed master plans. So we onboarded our watershed analyst, Doug Rowland. I know he and Grace Hansen were at a training today. I don't know if they ended up hopping on. I know Doug said he was going to try to, but his position was created specifically to help write these plans. So we onboarded him in the fall and really hit the ground running. Since then, we've been gathering data, pulling it from various, other city agencies, data we've already collected internally, 311 data. Mark was talking earlier about BSEC, the Baltimore Social Environmental Collaborative. They have helped a lot, providing some information and data, pointing us to other resources. And so we've really started to digest that data and kind of put it into context of the watershed master plan. We also had some community engagement sessions. We did 2 in-person sessions, one for each of the different watersheds. And then we had a virtual session. The virtual session was very well attended. We have a recording of that. I'll drop it in the chat here after I finish speaking, if anybody wants to read it. Or not read it, sorry, watch it. We did an overview of kind of the plan and asked some questions about hotspots and some of the things we'd like to see, or that the communities would like to see included in the plan. We're also working right now on the first rough draft. I want to say we're about 75% of the way there. One of the things that was holding us up was we were working towards trying to acquire some flood risk data. So I read an article back in, I want to say it was August. It was a very long time ago, and it was a Washington Post article, and it talked about Washington, D.C. and how they had recently completed an assessment of a vulnerability assessment of some of their important transportation infrastructure, so bridges, railways, things like that. And they wanted to see what the flood risk was currently and what that would look like, 50 years, 100 years. And in that article, it mentioned this company, Fathom. So I immediately reached out to Fathom and started talking with them. And that was, like I said, last August, last summer. Kind of put that on the back burner. And then once we got Doug on board, we started talking again about data sources where we could find information, and Fathom entered the conversation again. And so we just recently, I think that was last week, time is kind of a blur, but we finally closed and got that data set. So we have that data now to start really digging into it and kind of looking at that alongside everything else that we already have. So making tons of great progress, got some good feedback from those meetings. But those are some of the key accomplishments that we've made since the fall when we really started working hard on this. Next slide. Okay, and so just to give you an idea of next steps and timeline, we're hoping to have our first draft done by the end of this month. We're still on track to meet that target. First up, we were hoping to send it to city agencies, utilizing the flooding and infrastructure work group, which myself, Kim Grove, and Grace Hansen all co-chair. So going to that group, and in that group, pretty much all of the key agencies that might have comment on a plan like this, they are represented on that working group. So first up, we're planning to send the draft to those folks. We've been meeting with them next week to kind of go over, what to expect and what we're looking for. At our April meeting, which is early mid-April, that's when we're hoping to get feedback from those folks and then incorporate that feedback into another iteration, another draft of the plan. And then from there, it would go to some of our nonprofit partners, specifically. I think we were thinking about sending along with that first draft to two of the key partners, nonprofit partners that we had. And that was the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership. They we picked them to kind of support the Gwynns Falls portion of it. And then Waterfront Partnership was the second nonprofit we selected, and they were to help kind of more with the Baltimore Harbor side of things. So city agencies and those two nonprofit partners will get first look at it. We'll incorporate that feedback. After that, we'll open it up to more nonprofits and other city partners and the general public. To incorporate feedback and then get more comment on. So we're going to work concurrently with neighboring jurisdictions while all of this is happening. We haven't had, since we've gotten Doug on, it's like I said, it's been very hit the ground running. So we haven't had a chance yet to really start making those connections with the neighboring jurisdictions, but it was important to us to at least, at a minimum, address that in the plan. But we're really hoping to actually connect with those people in those jurisdictions before we actually finalize the plan and start forging some of those partnerships now. We're lucky in that Doug came to us from Baltimore County, so he already has contacts there. If any of you have contacts in those jurisdictions with people that either get us to the right people or would want to put eyes on something like this, more than happy to take those names and reach out and create those connections. We're hoping to finalize the plan in June and complete it. Formal adoption will probably take a little bit longer, and this commission will be part of that process. But that we're looking to June and then into the summer for when we get to that part of it. So that's pretty much all that I had to share on where we are and kind of where we're going with the watershed master plans. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything related to it? Okay, Morgan?
Yeah, Joe, thank you for this. This is really terrific.
Sure.
I was wondering, as part of the feedback, but also, for lack of a better phrase, socializing the plan, is there would your respective city agencies be taking this to Maryland DNR or to MDE, asking for both their feedback and then perhaps, hey, is there any funding opportunities to advance this? And likewise, if we were under a different presidential administration, engaging with those federal agencies, whether it's NOAA or NRCS or Forest Service, Park Service, those different agencies that are involved with land management or water resources. You can skip the answer to the federal because we know the answer to that. But with the states, how does that get handled?
Yeah, so well, like we said, the money came from DNR. We've also talked to MDE a lot, like even in the early stages of this. So when we started the very first conversation I had with Fathom, they were like, "Oh, we've talked to MDE. They're thinking about purchasing our data too." And so that really pushed conversations along. We weren't able to wait for the state to make their decision and pull the trigger. So we went ahead and we ended up using some of our grant money. We used state money to go ahead and buy just the data for Baltimore. But we definitely view this as collaborative with the state. So we've talked to MDE lots and lots about various different parts of this plan. And also looking at the legislation that has been proposed. I don't know where any of it stands now, but I was referred, I think, 3 or 4 different bills to comment on. And I think at least 2 of them talked about, they all call it different things. So they didn't quite call it a watershed master plan per se.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's basically what they were proposing and going to start require for some of these watersheds. And they had another one that kind of renamed certain watersheds as interjurisdictional watersheds, which that one, it's like that we already treat them that way. Because that's what they are. But I guess if you want to officially change the name with the state or reclassify with the state. So yeah, there's a solid chance that something like this becomes a formal requirement. So we have been very keyed into that stuff, those conversations. There was also talk, it's been a while now since I've heard of it. One of the key players at MDE passed away, so the work kind of halted. But talking about using these like watershed master plans to kind of guide MS4 compliance. So different jurisdictions can use them to kind of say, okay, so here's what's specific to our watersheds. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. So it kind of helps us set our own goals and look at things, that are pretty specific to us, specific to Baltimore and how we can accomplish things. And then using that to guide our work and what we do. So we've tried to remain a part of those conversations as those laws are thrown out there and developed, as these ideas for plans are thrown out there and developed. And one of those bills, or maybe even 2 of them, also talked about funding becoming available to implement projects within watersheds that are identified in these plans. So it's evolving, but it will definitely be a collaborative effort with the state agencies, especially MDE.
And, I'm not suggesting anyone get cute. Are you allowed, how does it get handled, in terms of like Van Hollen's and also Brooks environmental staff of saying like, we're not asking for any money, but we want you to be aware of this activity that's going on in the city and, ideas that are being generated. Is that allowed and that may be a question for Ava. Is that allowed? Where you go up to the line of informing but not requesting?
Yeah, that's definitely an Ava question. I will tell you, I haven't interacted with any of the state senators, but I have interacted with Michelle Guyton. She's my personal rep. And she, I don't know if she chairs it or if she's VP. She's on one of the environmental committees. So I have had some explicit conversations with her. But that's less as my role, in the city and more just like about environmental issues in general. But yeah, Ava, I'll let you. Can't hear you.
I don't see Ava coming off of mute. I know that my name also shows up as Ava due to an account sharing issue. Karis also has a question, so maybe if Ava can.
I think that was her.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I apologize for that. But yeah, sorry. No, that's a great question, Morgan. And thanks for sharing that, Joe. The city has a process for submitting formal federal appropriations requests. That is an internal process as well as state appropriations requests that's led by our Office of Government Relations in the mayor's office. So yeah, and there are different projects that get submitted through that process, and there's an internal selection process that each project is reviewed under. So
Yeah. Well, and I'm making a distinction here between requesting funding and simply informing, where just to let the staffers know in Van Hollen's office and also Brooks' office of here's some of the, I call it sharing the good news, channeling your inner Baptist minister of just like, we want to share this information, and then, they do with it what they do.
yeah, and we manage those communications through the government relations team.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
Okay.
And Terrace and Kim both have hands up. I don't know if Kim's was a response to the question or a separate question.
Ladies first, please.
It was an add-in. So 2 parts for the add-in. I just want to clarify some things. Unfortunately, in the water industry, we use the same 10 wards. So the watershed master plan that sustainability is developing to meet the criteria set by the National Flood Insurance Program and the community rating system, that has very specific items to address, and it's really focused on that 100-year storm and that regulated floodplain. Whereas the flood studies that are set by the state law and MDE had proposed some bills on it, that is getting a little bit more into the weeds about what kinds of storms are actually causing flooding and thinking beyond riverine flooding or tidal flooding. But that being said, those items, there's been some back and forth related to flooding and flood management and how it may relate to the Clean Water Act. And right now, the city's stance in supporting MDE for a previous litigation on the MS4 permit has basically been flooding is flooding. That's quantity. And that is separate from quality and the health of the stream. So for right now, even if you have a potential for flooding to be happening, especially if it's flooding within just the street, it may not necessarily mean that it is going to be, or the solutions for that flooding aren't going to necessarily mean you're going to have water quality improvements. So that's number one. The second thing, to go on what Morgan was asking, I want to highlight that April 16th to the 24th, 16th to the 20th is Water Week, and that is when the associations like the Water Environment Federation and the American Water Works Association basically do a combined effort nationally to just be talking to congressional leaders, going up on the Hill. We also host specifically for stormwater and flooding a a joint session for both Senate and representatives to hear where the major items are on a national level. And because Baltimore has been so pronounced, we're also and vocal in those groups. We get to also highlight examples of what we're doing in the city and how it relates to needs from federal agencies. So hopefully you can see that there's different approaches that we're taking beyond just requesting some federal funding.
Yeah, I just want to add in. I know I was at the first one of the first planning meetings, and one of the initial sections of that presentation was people from the community kind of sharing out what areas in their neighborhoods kind of have like sitting water. And I'm wondering if someone can clarify the connection between that initiative and then the initial dashboard that has already selected different sites. How could that tool have been used? I'm just thinking about myself sitting there to kind of have a reference point. Has that been thought about at all? Are they all connected? Am I crossing over in the wrong ways here around this water management plan and then the initial dashboard that we saw that I thought was really great because this already has projects and everything already established?
And you're actually proving my point. Those projects are there for quality management, which are there to address really that first 1 inch. They will not be as effective for larger, more intense storms. That being said, it would be interesting to see the feedback where folks are saying, here's where water is just collecting. Those may be low points where a practice, we could hit 2 targets with 1 shot. But it would be interesting to know who has that specific data.
Well, Kim, was kind of interesting. It was hard. I think it was hard for folks maybe to think about where sitting water is, but then how does that connect to people's basements, like residents and like the flooding happening in their basements, or does it at all? And thank you for clarifying. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I just think it's a great crossover for the community members that we're asking about the impact on their lives in the watershed.
Joe, do you want to take that, or would you like me to?
You can take it.
Okay. So this watershed master plan and even the data set that Joe referenced is all about surface flow during storms. It's not going to get into basement flooding that is coming from infiltration, groundwater, or even backups from sewers. So that is a big gap in our data set that we are trying to fill. And we have had discussions with the researchers with Baltimore Social Environmental Collaboration, as well as other local researchers to see how can we get, first off, why do we have such a gap in those data sets? To understand where the problem is so that we can understand what is actually causing that problem and what the solutions can be. Because I've sat in enough community meetings where once you get beyond somebody raising their hand saying, I have a flooding issue, you have to ask 3 more questions before you get down to the flooding is actually happening in their basement, and it's happening for certain storms, but not all storms. And they don't necessarily want to keep reporting because they're scared of their insurance. So it really takes, for that kind of data set, it is more of a discussion, not a simple 1 question. 311 will be able to give our full information, but we do have that on our radar.
Yeah, that's something we come across in weatherization when we go to do an assessment, and we'll see. One of the questions we ask is, do you have water in your basement? When does it show up? Is it after after the last snowstorm we had? We get a lot more because the water just sits and soaks. But then we do come across the house where we're like, well, where does the water come in? And the homeowner will say it seems to come up in the middle of the floor. And then we're kind of going, okay, that's not the rain gutters, it's not this, it's not that, and it's hard for us to kind of track what neighborhoods have it. And sometimes we'll try to look at the riverine system and what the waterways that we've buried to see if a neighborhood is going to have like a rash of flooding if we get a certain type of storm system. But it'd be great if we could collect all that data, but we'd have to have a place to put it.
No, I just remember, and Kim, you had this great idea years ago to have people take, oh, was this Morgan? Take pictures of their flood events and you can like connect to the GPS, you know, the coordinates to see where the home actually is and maybe
That,
tell
yes,
stories in the community. That's such a great idea.
that's
And then,
already on DNR already has a website to do that. But just understand this, and this is going to be when we talk about flooding. The first thing everyone wants to know is where the flooding is going to happen, but nobody is thinking about that next step of, okay, this is where flooding may happen. How, now that I've demonstrated this risk, what is this going to mean for me and my property values, my ability to sell my house, and where my insurance company may raise my rates? And we've got to think to that next part, because what we're doing is we're identifying risk, and it's great. And thank you, Ava, for putting MyCoast on there. But we have to understand where people may be hesitant is because they know what those next steps are and how it may negatively impact them. So we got to get over those hurdles for the next part of trying to get those data sets.
I just had a conversation with this group at University of Maryland, the water emergency team, and I brought that piece up. I said, how can an outside kind of research unit protect people's data, tell stories without telling, I mean, how do we do that to buffer it for that reason, Kim? Thank you for that. But I'll keep in the process. Yeah. The group is called MWET, WET, WET. XUMD. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I love that idea, Morgan. And maybe Joe, I don't know if you want to share about the way that the is it repetitive loss properties, the way that that's handled as far as not identifying a specific property, but identifying an area?
Yeah, so FEMA maintains data on repetitive loss and severe repetitive loss properties. There's a specific definition for it. It's something like if you've had 2 flood insurance claims, it's pretty low threshold. Within, I want to say, 10 years, over maybe like $1,000, you are considered a repetitive loss property. And I think severe is if you've had 3 or more. But we have to request that list and kind of maintain that list for ourselves. From those specific addresses, we create repetitive loss areas. And we actually send out a yearly communication to everyone that lives in those repetitive loss areas with specific information about what the flood risk is, what the flooding source would be, and things that you can do. And part of that is we need to look for ways to mitigate those structures, which is tricky because more than, I want to say it's close to 40% of them are not even in a regulated floodplain. So, you know, it can get really tricky how to handle them and communicate about them and all of that. And the reason we have to do it through areas and not the specific addresses is because the information is protected by the Privacy Act. But I can share those repetitive loss areas if anybody's interested in seeing what those are. They're pretty much where you'd expect them to be for the most part.
And Kim, I see that your hand's still up. I wasn't sure if that was from earlier or if that's a new hand.
Just giving a high five on Joe's awesome response. That's all.
I also dropped the YouTube video in the chat, and that is from the virtual public engagement session that we did. If anybody's interested in, you know, an hour and a half of listening to me talk or anything like that.
Well, I would just have a real quick question, if you don't mind. It may have been covered. I got called away on a phone call. I apologize if this is redundant, but I'm assuming you'll share this draft report with the commission at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
We also we used Conveo, an online tool, to solicit some of that feedback. So if anybody is interested in providing feedback, not on the plan, but just in general on flooding or areas in Baltimore, things you want us to focus on in the plan, I can share that link as well. And you can also share that with your networks. We'd love to get any feedback we could to include.
See your hand up, still 10.
Yeah, I'm now driving, so I haven't been able to put it down. I'm done.
No worries. Drive safe.
I am.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Joe? All right. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Well, with that, I want to move on to the next portion of the meeting, which is some internal committee discussion. So we will discuss the subcommittee. I know many of you had filled out the survey over the course of the last month, talking about the different subcommittees, and we wanted to have a discussion around the survey results. And just talk to the committee at large, especially the new commissioners, about the subcommittees, the distribution of them, and how they can work going forward. So I'll invite Morgan also to say a few words on that as well.
And Ted, can you advance the slide?
If you want, Morgan. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I don't really have much to add, so I don't want to take up any time with that.
Okay. All right. So, I'll tell you what. Well, I can do the recap. Actually, Amy's put together the slide here of the responses of or to the survey responses. So, just with the ranks here that people have ranked the different committees that they'd like to sit in, and it's been highlighted. Do you want to take it from there, Amy?
Sure, yeah. So we have 3 committees. We'd asked folks to kind of rank their preferences and interest levels for the different committees, with 5 being high interest and 1 being low interest. And then also we asked if anyone would want to step up and serve in a leadership role on any of the committees. So the darker highlights are where folks identified an interest in leading a committee. So the color coding here is just identifying the kind of highest level rankings for each commission member. And for some reason, Terrace's highlight isn't showing up on the 5 for development committee. So this was just kind of our starting point as far as looking at who was interested in leadership roles and what were people's highest preferences for involvement. And one thing that kind of, when you look at the overall that you notice is that there weren't many people that identified the events committee as their highest interest. So that gets into some of the options that we looked at. Next slide. So this is a little bit tough to look at because I was trying to fit a lot onto one slide, but over to the right, you can see what I had shown you earlier. That is the survey results, so that then you can kind of look at the 2 different options that I've put together for how we could take those survey responses and form committees. So we had, I think, 17 folks respond, 2 didn't respond, and then we have 2 empty seats. And then with those responses, we put together one option for everyone would be assigned to their first choice, and option 2 trying to get more towards equally sized committees. And so with that, we end up with fairly large, for the option everyone assigned by first choice, we end up with a fairly large legislative committee with 3 folks who are interested in co-leads, and then an additional 5 folks who would also be on the committee. Phil offered to lead the events committee, which we're very grateful for because he has a lot of experience in that area. And Erica was the other person who'd identified that as a first choice committee. And then for development committee, Morgan and Jeffrey had identified interest in leading, and then we have 5 others who were interested in that committee. So that's kind of where that would take us. Then option 2, I kind of looked at option 1 and looked at some reshuffling where nobody would be in a committee that they had ranked lower than a 4. And just looking at where some people might have rated several things as being of interest and looking at where we could potentially pull some people from the legislative committee or development committee from the first option and gauge interest in those folks joining the events committee to get kind of a better balance between the 3 different committees. So we, rather than kind of communicating out, these are the committees and this is what we're doing, we wanted to bring this for discussion so that folks can kind of understand what the survey results are. And we do want to make sure that we're not just kind of putting people in committees that they didn't show interest in, because we want to make sure that everybody is engaged and committed to participating. And we felt like the best way to do that is by making sure that we're being transparent and having discussion around what the outcomes are.
If I may add 2 things, one of which is, as Amy and Jared and I talked about this, one, we don't want to leave the events committee high and dry. That's important. Second is that, we're sensitive that people should join, feel comfortable being active in the committees that they want to be active in. That means also that if they want to be involved in more than one committee, that certainly is a possibility. And then finally, that 2 of the committees, and I say this without knowing for sure, so it'll prove out in terms of experience, that the legislative committee and the events committee may be associated with certain times of the year. That may or may not be true, but just to put it out there, in contrast to the development committee, which may have activities that are in things in front of them that are going year round, let's just say. So just an awareness of that may influence whether or not one feels as though one could be active in 2 committees. So those are some things to think about. And as I mentioned, this is the first time having these committees, so we don't have a track record to know about that comment about time. Do people have any reactions to what Amy's put before everyone?
Well, to begin with, thank you, Amy. That's a thankless job putting that all together, so I do appreciate it. And my only comment is just point me in the direction and I'll go. I'm good. But thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any strong objections to any of the committee assignments so far, or anybody want to serve in more than one committee? That was one of the main questions that we had. We didn't want to limit anybody if they really wanted to be a part of one committee, but had chosen selected another one with a higher ranking.
I guess I would. One, is that an open option, or are those going to be closed meetings? I would certainly be interested as there's a cadence for any subcommittee meetings, just to at least see some of the work in that smaller group and maybe have a more active role down the line. So I don't know if that option will remain an open one. And then just regarding the events committee, I would certainly love to have more than just one person. And I wholeheartedly believe you that I volunteered to be the lead, because I probably did, but I might be mistake. That might have been an oops on my part, but so I will appreciate all of the help we can get in that.
Well, we have full confidence in you, Phil, that you could probably, just you and Erica could handle it, but we kind of wondered whether or not that was a good idea for your behalf. Amy, you have your hand up, and Phil brought up this open meetings question, and that's a great point. I can't remember where we left that because that was something that you, Jared, and I discussed.
Yeah, and that might be why Ava had her hand up too.
Okay.
The limitation that we have for the committees is that if a quorum of members are meeting, then that needs to be an open to the public and advance advertised meeting, which then sometimes gets difficult just as far as the coordination of additional meetings and making them public if it's just meant to be kind of some internal coordination. So that's kind of the only restriction, is we can't have everybody participating in every committee unless we would make it part of the regular meetings that are open public meetings.
What is our quorum number?
So right now, so I'll say this with once we get everyone sworn in, because folks who haven't been, folks who are coming into their first term and haven't been sworn in yet can't officially act or vote in a role. But once we have those folks, we would have 19 folks on the commission, and so a total of 10 members would be a quorum.
Yeah, so under option 1, the most fully subscribed committee is legislative committee, and they're at 8. So that would fall below the quorum.
And we also have quite a few, or a couple of people who've made comments in the chat, as far as Meredith offered to switch to events if needed. And then happy either way this goes, happy to be on the events committee. And he's been the program committee chair for USGBC in the past. So it sounds like there's some willingness to do some shifting.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to help out on events as well.
Yeah.
Since development has a few more. So if anybody wants to come off of that.
Bill may even promise cookies. Who knows?
Okay.
And we also, just to make sure that we get through the slides before we wrap up, we have the staff members who will be supporting the 3 different committees have put together some slides just talking about how each committee would be getting started as far as some of the early agenda things to focus on. So we can go through some of that and then maybe wrap up with what the next steps are on this, as far as if next steps would be commission members like signing or emailing the co-chairs and Ava and myself to kind of confirm your willingness to participate as far as kind of the options that are presented here, and then we'll have this the committees coordinate on when there would be a first meeting. So next slide.
I'll just add, thank everyone for their willingness, A, to participate in the subcommittee, and second, to consider making changes in order to advance all the efforts.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that, Morgan. We really appreciate everyone's flexibility and your patience as we figure this out, and your response. So for the legislative committee, we really want to focus on getting specific legislative recommendations that pulls policy priorities from our respective plans across the city. That's the sustainability plan, our climate action plan, and the disaster preparedness plan, as well as other applicable plans that outline specific goals for climate mitigation and adaptation. We want to pull those and have formal policy recommendations submitted to Mayor Scott. And so we'll be focusing on that. And then in the future, we do want this committee to support responses for certain state legislation that is of relevance, and that will be at the direction and kind of like in coordination again with our mayor's office of government relations. And then on the next slide, we just kind of outline some of our top kind of priorities and goals for the coming year. And so for those legislative recommendations to be submitted to the mayor, we want to focus on energy waste reduction and nature-based solutions. And there's a lot of ideas and kind of like some recommendations in all of our plans as it relates to that. So excited to digging into some of these details with everyone. During that first meeting, I'll send out an email to coordinate schedules, but during that first meeting, we'll dig into some background information and we'll have different subject matter experts join us so we can better understand some of the implications of different strategies to certain energy policies or certain policies in general. And then I'll pass it to Natalie and Ebony to talk about the engagement committee.
Hi, folks. It's Natalie. Ebony, you can, come off mute whenever. But so Ebony and I are going to be leading the events committee, which is going to be super fun, you guys. Everyone should want to be on the events committee. But we're really, our mission as focusing on events and engagement will be to promote and support a variety of public engagement. So, obviously our annual open house, but we're also looking for support in organizing quarterly in-person commission meetings and possibly tabling community events like the Growth Center pop-up events that Mark and Andrew's office and Kim's office lead. And that's every fall and spring, so a bit of seasonality there. And then, of course, more so like outreach around campaigns and engagement strategies. And Ted, if you go to the next slide. Before I pass it to Ebony to talk about more those community events, so we are planning for the open house, as you've all heard. It's going to be on June 6th. We will be forming a events committee planning group for specifically the open house, and really looking to crowdsource ideas from committee members to figure out what that looks like and the frequency to meet. So we can figure that out. But that is definitely a pressing need now until June 6th. We can go to the next slide, Ted.
And thank you, Natalie. Some other events that we might need help with, like Natalie said, might include the Growth Center events. So like she said, they are seasonal. We have one in the fall, one in the spring. So right now we're currently in the spring schedule. We have an upcoming event coming up on March 28th, and then that'll go through May 27th. That's the Growth Center schedule. I think the last tabling event to table for is on May 2nd during Nature Everywhere Week, which is another opportunity for commissioners to get engaged. So Nature Everywhere Week is a week-long celebration to get youth involved in getting outdoors and becoming more environmentally aware and become more leaders and stewards in the environmental arena. So that's another opportunity for commissioners to get involved. So if you're interested in tabling, we haven't necessarily come up with a specific way for commissioners to get involved yet, but we are working on coming up with maybe like a survey, or just you email me, or we just have a conversation during our meetings, however often those meetings occur. So if you're interested in tabling and want to learn more about what it's like to promote the Office of Sustainability at these events, please let me know. You can definitely reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. And I think that's it for the Events and Engagement Committee.
Amy, do you want me to take it? Or I know you've had to talk a lot.
Nope, go
Okay.
ahead.
So we have about 1 minute, so I'll make this fast. So we're really going to be looking with the Resource Development Committee, not just on fundraising, but on all types of resources. So what we are proposing is getting started with looking at partnerships in general and the potential with nonprofits, agencies, businesses and so on, where we can start looking to forge some partnerships to really be advancing some of the goals of the plans. So again, that might come in many different ways, but we'll be really looking at some programmatic needs, advancing actions in the plans, as I mentioned, and then other timely opportunities, which will change as new opportunities come about. And we would, so next slide, please. We will be calling a meeting with the committee, so we're really excited to see so much interest in it because this is going to be a fun one. So we're going to be looking to put rubber to the road and really get some stuff done. So, we'll be starting with the partnership assessment and then really checking out what the commissioners have in terms of their expertise and skill sets that we can match up with our team members so we can get everyone equipped to go out and start meeting with folks and really assessing where there's potential for us moving forward with other organizations. So, you'll be hearing from Amy and I moving forward to convene that meeting. We're leaving a lot of this open because we're going to have some discussions with you so we can really co-create this group with the folks in the committee. So really looking forward to it.
Thank you, Valerie. So that's kind of the end of what we had as far as materials. Jared and Morgan, I had thrown out kind of some thoughts on how we might proceed as far as finalizing committees and getting to work. So I don't know if you want to kind of wrap things up as far as how we want to proceed with next steps.
Yeah, if maybe, I know one of the things that we wanted to do is maybe even broach the topic of a meeting time for the individual committees. Could you bring up the slide with the two different configurations of the committees, and we can just, if nobody has any objections, think to them as they stand, or if they do, just make it known, and then maybe we can propose some times for these subcommittee meetings going forward. Okay. How about, can we just put it to a vote? Or if anybody does have any objections, and I guess maybe we can make it anonymous, but if you do, I guess you can just drop a line to Amy or I or Morgan in the chat. And if not, we can go ahead and vote, I guess, on option 1 or option 2. I was thinking option 2 has the more equal distribution of folks, but no one has any objections to that.
I think option 2 makes sense too, unless we had, another chance for folks who might want to switch over.
So
yeah, I think now's that chance.
If you go with option 1, I can move over to the events committee board, if that's the choice.
I can do the same.
So I heard Tim, and then was the second voice Meredith?
Meredith?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay. With those additions, it sounds like people are in favor of option 1. It's basically option 1.
As long as that makes sense in terms of, because I know you listed like in-person meetings and all. None
of this precludes. I'm sorry, none of this precludes us from getting involved in any of the committees, not necessarily as a member of the committee, but certainly if there's some need or interest, I would think that there wouldn't be any reason why we couldn't participate in some events. So, unless I'm wrong on that, but
No, we want to encourage cross-pollination between the committees, especially if there's expertise or interest that dictates that. So always open, but just to give somebody, somebody a baseline, somebody to be in charge, somebody to make sure the lights are on in that committee is really the lead, is what the lead does. And then everybody else is a member, but people can attend meetings as they choose if they're not a lead.
perfect.
Morgan, were you talking?
I'm sorry. I was saying this is to get us started, and we'll learn to adapt over time because this is the first time that we've been organized with these three committees, and I think the pollinization that Jared spoke about is really important to make sure that we're trying to achieve that. So, if to have a vote, then we're considering using option 1 for the moment as a template, with Tim moving over to events committee and Meredith moving over to events committee. Is that sort of what we're advancing as the thing to be considered?
Yes.
Okay.
So is that our motion?
Is that the formal process now, Amy, that we asked for a motion?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the orientation where we were going to kind of run through the process for making motions and taking votes and everything, but
I'm on board.
So I don't know if you want to do unanimous consent or whatever, or whatever the different options are for taking a vote. It seemed like there wasn't any opposition to what was just proposed, but we can ask for folks.
Yeah. Sure. So we've got a motion. We got a second. We'll all vote. Option 1. Yay.
Yep.
With amendments. So we're clear.
Yeah. Show of hands, I guess. I'm going to vote by show of hands.
I can figure out how to do that while I'm driving here. Hang on a second.
Oh, no worries.
You can just say, Tim, that your
yes.
Tim, your hand's been up the whole time.
Robert,
you're voting yes whether you want to or not.
Does anyone have Robert's rule style? You can just say, does anyone have an objection? If you think it's going to be unanimous.
I'm assuming the hands are raised are not objections and they were yays. So. All right. It looks like we were all in favor. So we'll move forward with option 1.
With amendments.
With them.
Yes.
Yep, with the amendments that were discussed. Okay. And so I will get an email out to everyone so that the folks who weren't here know what was discussed, and I will have the staff supporting each committee reach out with some options for the first meeting of each of the committees.
Sounds great.
Okay. Cool. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Everybody, good night.